Following being a police officer, I ran a business. I own a business, I still own a business, and I grew the business from a very small business, employing about 4 people, to around about 100 people. And our business was unloading coal at the port of Immingham. And over the years, I think we unloaded something like 150 million tons of coal. So, if you want somebody to blame for the climate crisis, I'm your man. Anyway, in 2018, my wife, who's an old school sort of jackboot wearing feminist, started telling me that, have you seen all this transgender stuff? Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, guys have always sort of dressed as women now and again. You know, so what? Yeah, but it's moving beyond that now. It's moving way beyond that. There's now this phrase that trans women are women. Are women. I'm like, well, that doesn't sound right, because a trans woman is simply a bloke in a dress, isn't it? That was my understanding of it. A little bit weird, but you know, there we go. We said, no, trans women are literally women. And then she said this, she said, the thing is, Harry, unless men start speaking out, people won't listen. Because who listens to women? I thought, well, fair enough, okie dokie. So I had a bit of a Twitter account, which I used to sort of watch football and bits and pieces like that. And I thought, well, I'll just start sort of tweeting a few bits and pieces about the trans debate, which is what I did. That with virtually no followers and absolutely no retweets, hardly ever, no likes. If I ever got a like, I'd think that, you know, hey, look at me, 3 people liked my tweet. One day I might reach 900 followers. It was that sort of, I was that much of a nobody in the Twitter sphere. Until January 2019. I happened to have gone shopping at Tesco's for my wife, because that's the kind of guy that I am. And I was sitting in the car park playing Candy Crush, because that's also the kind of guy that I am, when there was a phone call, and it was my managing director from my office. And he said, H, where are you? I said, I'm in Tesco's. Why, what's up? He said, well, the police have been here. I said, all right, okie dokie. And I'm thinking, you know, what have our lads been doing? Have they been driving an excavator down the motorway? What have they done? They've probably done something really absurd. I said, is he still there now? He said, no, he's gone, but I've got his number if you'd like to give him a ring. So I thought, okay, I'll give the guy a ring. So I did. I rang him up, and lo and behold, I got hold of this unfortunate chap called PC Gull, who introduced himself as a Humberside police constable and a community liaison officer. And the first thing that he said to me was, are you Harry the Owl on Twitter? Well, I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't expecting that. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, well, I'm here to talk to you because there's been a complaint. I said, right, a complaint? He said, yes. Apparently, your place of work is not safe for trans people. I said, have you any idea where I work? I said, I work at Immingham Dock. I said, we ain't got any trans people at Immingham Dock. We've barely got any gay people at Immingham Dock. I said, Immingham's the sort of place where if a plane flies over, people stop and stare. It's not diversity central. It really, really isn't. I said, but here's the thing, here's the important thing. Not one time have I been complained about for a breach of the Equality Act. Not one time have I been complained about for the acts which preceded the Equality Act. So I know for a fact that my place of work is for anybody. I mean, it is dangerous, because we're working in a very dangerous environment on a dock with machines, etc. But it's not dangerous because I'm tweeting something, that is for sure. And he said, well, nevertheless, there's been a complaint, and you know, I need to talk to you because you're the suspect now in a hate crime. I said, a hate crime? That sounds utterly ridiculous. I said, was anything that I tweeted actually criminal? He said, oh no, nothing was criminal. I said, so if he wasn't criminal, what's going on? He said, well, we need to check your thinking. And that was the really scary part. And I said, hold on a minute, you're the police. Yes. I've not committed a crime. No. And you want to check my thinking? And he said, yes. I said, have you any idea what that makes you sound like? And he said, no. And I said 1984. 1984 is a dystopian novel. It's not a police how-to manual. And this went flying over in his head as well. Anyway, so we got chatting. I said, right, so okie dokie. Let's establish this. I've not committed a crime. Definitely not. I said, right, so I've tweeted some stuff How much have I tweeted? He said, well, we've got 31 tweets. I said, right, okay. I said, well, in your estimation, which one of those tweets comes the closest, that if I'd just gone a little bit closer, it would have crossed the line into being deeply criminal? And he said, well, there was a limerick. I said, a limerick? I said, I don't write limericks. He said, nevertheless, you retweeted one, and therefore you endorsed it. I said, right, okie dokie, now we're getting into the realm of the absolute absurd here. Now it turns out, do you want to hear the limerick? Yes. It wasn't a limerick. It identified as a limerick, but it wasn't a limerick. It was actually a piece of feminist doggerel, and it goes something like this. Your breasts are made of silicon, your vagina goes nowhere, and we can tell the difference even when you're not there. Your hormones are synthetic. Now let's just cross this bridge. What you have, you stupid man, is male privilege. Now, you would not think that this was an indicator that I was about to commit genocide, would you? You wouldn't think that. But nevertheless, this is what the police said. They said that me retweeting that was a precursor to crime. When I asked them what crime, they said the murder of Stephen Lawrence. And I said, I think you'll find he's already dead. Which they didn't find funny at all, because he's not. But then they went on and said, actually, even worse than that, it's genocide. Because hate speech, which you're committing, is a precursor to genocide. And without what we call necessary intervention, this will escalate from antilocution or hate speech to discrimination, through attack, to murder, to genocide. And this is why we need to check your thinking. Well, we had a chat about this, and then I realised that there was this thing called a non-crime hate incident. And a non-crime hate incident is when the police record you for hate that is not criminal, but nevertheless it is recorded on a crime report, not a non-crime report, a crime report where I was named as the suspect and the complainant was named as the victim, and the offence was transgender hate. Now, down in the T's and C's at the very bottom of this page, it said category of crime, non-crime. Now, again, we're talking about Orwell. How can we have a crime that is a non-crime? It's absolutely nonsensical. Well, then it gets worse than this, because we then did some research with the Free Speech Union and the Telegraph, and we discovered that since 2014 there were over 120,000 of these non-crime hate incidents have been recorded against members of the public. Now, if it's not terrifying enough that you, for retweeting a limerick or saying the other things that I said was I was assigned a mammal at birth, but I identify as a fish. Please don't misspecies me. The police considered that to be a hate crime, which was a precursor to genocide. I said Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses. How about that then? They said that was a hate crime, that was a precursor to genocide. And on on one occasion, I simply said her, H-U-H, her. Now I don't know what I said her about, because what I said her about had been redacted. But I can't think of anything where her indicates genocide, unless, of course, it's everybody that wants to kill trans people say her. But I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that. So we discovered that there were over 120,000 of these non-crime hate incidents recorded against members of the public, including my colleague at Fair Cop, Sarah Fillmore, who had made a joke about her cat being a Methodist. And that somebody had complained about Sarah Fillmore to Wiltshire Police, and said that by saying her cat was a Methodist, she was saying that because cats wander around unhinged, peeing over the plants in people's gardens, that must be what Methodists do, and therefore this was hate against Methodists. And she said, she wrote them as a barrister, as a family law barrister, and said, this is patent nonsense, and they said, no, we're keeping it as a non-crime hate incident. This is how ridiculous it all got. But it gets worse than that. Because not only did you end up having a non-crime hate incident recorded on a police record under a crime report against your name. But we found out that these non-crime hate incidents were disclosable on an enhanced DBS check. So if you were applying for a job in a charity, or a school, or a university, or to be a trustee, and there was any possibility that you would be coming across anyone who might be considered vulnerable, or had one of the 9 protected characteristics, or particularly one of the 5 monitored strands, then the police were going to release this information to your potential employer in order for them to make a better decision as to whether or not you were suitable for that job. Now then, can I ask you this? If you're an employer and you get from the police a record that says crime incident on it, with your applicant's name, with the crime of hate, what are you going to do with that? I know what we're going to do with it. I'm not going to read the T's and C's at the bottom that say non-crime, non-crime. I'm just going to throw it in the bin. So at this point we realised this was incredibly, incredibly sinister, which is why we decided to take the Chief Constable of Homicide through the High Court and the College of Policing, who had published the guidance in 2014 through the High Court. Now, in the first instance, we won against the Chief Constable, and the Chief Constable was characterised by Mr. Justice Knowles at the High Court as having behaved like the Stasi, the Checker, and the Gestapo. So that, yippee, that was a real win. What was bizarre was that the College of Policing guidance, which sets out when a non-crime hate incident should be recorded, was deemed to be lawful. So we have this peculiar situation where the guidance is lawful, but following the guidance is unlawful. And we thought, again, this cannot possibly be right, so we took the College of Policing through the Court of Appeal, and we won. And as a result of that, the hate crime guidance was struck down. Earlier this year, Suella Braverman rewrote the police guidance, and that is now going through as statutory guidance, so the police can no longer record non-crime hate incidents against you or I simply because we express something controversial. Non-crime hate incidents still do exist, but they exist for the purpose for which they were intended. And that is, if you're in that space where you are plotting and scheming to stab a black man, for instance, which was the case with Stephen Lawrence, then it's quite right the police should collect that information because it may prove useful in preventing a crime. But what we have done is struck down this notion that they can criminalise you or criminalise me because we've said something that is controversial. And that, I think, is a massive, massive victory. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, so here we are. Do you remember the good old days when lesbians kind of looked like that? Alright? That was great. We all knew what lesbians looked like. And now, unfortunately, our lesbians look like that. And if you laugh, you're committing a hate crime. You're committing a hate crime. Fortunately for us, it can no longer be recorded, but there you go. This is, if I had a Tinder account, that would be my profile pic. But unfortunately, that would be the reality. But there we are, because we have a massive disconnect between what is true and how people present. Okay. I am what I say I am is the new mantra of the woke. Well, I'm sorry. And unless you happen to be God Almighty, who you say who you are doesn't count. You are what you are. You are not what you say you are. And that's true. There's another mantra. Love is love. No, it isn't. Love is not love. Because when they say love is love, what they mean is that love has no boundaries. Now, the good side of that is that it means that a white person can love a black person because love is love. And we'd all say amen to that, right? We would all absolutely agree with that. We would say that, okie dokie, a rich person can love a poor person. And we'd all say amen to that because it is true. But it goes beyond that. With critical theory, there is a breakdown of all boundaries. Boundaries are in their mind, all social constructs, and all social constructs are there in order to preserve power and the position of the elite, and therefore all social boundaries need pulling down. That means if you're a woman and you want to love a woman, that's fine. If you're a man and you want to love a man, that's fine. But it gets even worse than that. It goes beyond that, because that's fine. If you're an adult and you happen to love a child, love is love. Okay? And we have Peter Tatchell, who says that not all sex with children is damaging. It is damaging. And Peter Tatchell says that because he had sex as a child with adults, he's living testament that it's not damaging. Well, I would say quite the opposite. I would say that he's living testament that it is damaging. That's where we're at. So we need to be very, very careful about this mantra, love is love. The other mantra is, bring your whole self to work. No, I don't want us bringing our whole self to work. I want us to bring our professional self to work and leave the rest of it, the kink and the skateboarding and the dressing up and whatever it happens to be, leave that for your domestic home time. This idea that we are to bring our whole self to work is absolute nonsense. It's also applied disproportionately. Because if you happen to be gender critical and you bring your whole gender critical self to work, there is a fair chance that you yourself on the wrong side of a disciplinary. I know this because I've represented with FairCop a number of police officers now who found themselves running foul of precisely this. A few months ago now, North Yorkshire Police had a go at a female police officer. And what they'd done, they'd gone through some WhatsApp groups, and they'd noticed that she'd posted a flag on International Women's Day of the suffragettes flag. And the suffragette flag apparently had a crease in it. And she put, could have ironed it. Okie dokie. She put, could have ironed it. The police decided that she was being misogynistic by putting that. Misogynistic by putting, could have ironed it. And bear in mind she's a woman, but she's a gender critical woman. So, this is the way we go. Could have ironed it. She went to her federation and said, can you help me? And they said, well, how we can help you is this. You plead guilty and we will help mitigate the punishment. That's what they said. That's what they said. So she got me on a call with them and I sacked them. I don't know whether I'm allowed to sack the police federation, but I sacked them anyway. And told them they didn't know what they were doing. And I made the argument thus. I said, there is misogyny here, but the misogyny is entirely with you, the accuser. Why is that? Because all she did was put, could have ironed it. She didn't say she could have ironed it. She just put, could have ironed it. But this is the state that we are in. If the police don't like your set of beliefs in the round, if you bring your whole self to work and you are openly gender critical, for instance, and you openly state that sex is immutable, that human beings cannot change sex, and you bring that whole of yourself to work, you will then find yourself on the wrong end of a witch hunt where they go through your WhatsApp groups and try and fire you for posting a flag. That's where we're at. Okay, this is what the police used to look like. You have the next slide, please. That's what they became in the 2000s. The next slide, please. And this is where we are. This is where we are now. I find that to be absolutely terrifying because we have a whole series of high-ranking officers openly marching with the pride flag. Now, what they are suffering here is a thing called willful blindness. The police code of ethics is absolutely crystal clear that there is a line that the police shall not cross, and that is to not be engaged in politics. But not only is it that, not only can the police not be engaged in politics, they cannot even look like they are engaged in politics. And the test is, could the reasonably informed person believe that an association may cause them to act with impartiality? Now, I think the reasonable person can look at that and go, that looks like those police officers are sporting pride. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. I think that's what the reasonable person would assume. Secondly, Pride have said pride is political. Pride has said pride is a protest. So what on earth are senior officers doing marching with the colours and the flags of a political protest movement? That's where we are at. Now, I can tell you, I am friends with a former Chief Constable, Deputy Chief Constable of Merseyside. And in Merseyside, there is a massive Protestant population and a massive Catholic population. And as you know, the Catholics and the Protestants don't always get on. Once a year, there is a march, the Orange Parade, where the Orange men, the Orange Order, and the Protestant supporters, they raise their banners, they raise their flags, they play their flutes, they bang their drums, and they march through parts of the Wirral and Merseyside. The standing order to the police during that march was, do not even accidentally march or walk to the beat of the drum, in case it signals support. Okay? We've gone from don't accidentally march to the beat of a drum to actually providing the band. That is true. The police are now marching in pride, wearing the colours of pride, and in some cases actually providing the band. That has to be wrong. What we have here is a deeply, deeply politicised police force. And if you look here, this is North Yorkshire Police. Stu from the North Yorkshire Police LGBT Association launching the Ally scheme. Be proud, speak positively. There's another slide that says, here are our senior officers signing pledges. I put a Freedom of Information request into North Yorkshire Police and said, what pledge do police officers make beyond the oath of attestation to the Sovereign? And they came back and said, there are no oaths or pledges that our police officers make. And I said, well, if you're going to lie, then how about not putting it on Facebook and Twitter showing that your police officers are making pledges? And they went, oh, that pledge. I said, yes, that pledge. What does the pledge say? And they said, we don't know. We can't find it. I said, right. I said, well, why don't you go and ask the senior officers concerned about the pledge that they took? And they said, we don't know which senior officers. I said, well, it's right there in the picture. Go find out what the pledge is. And they said, it will take too much money to find this information, go away. So then we wrote another FOI and said, are there any consequences to a police officer in North Yorkshire Police who refuses to take the pledge? And they wrote back and said, we're not telling you because it's a malicious request. That's where we are. Just do the next slide, please. Now then, how many levels of wrong is that? That is a West Midlands police officer. Can anybody guess what sexy they are? Yeah. Anybody think that that's a woman? No. Absolutely. It is clearly a man. Now, there are a number of things wrong with that. One, it's a man pretending to be a woman. Two, they look absolutely deranged. And three, they're pointing a weapon at a camera. That is wrong on every single level. Why do they do that, do you think? Why do you think West Midlands Police posted that? Virtue signalling, yeah, it is virtue signalling, yeah, but anything else?
It's an underlying message that if you don't lie.
Yes, I think that's exactly it. They post that to give you the underlying message that resistance is absolutely futile. The reason for the flags is so that you think that resistance is futile. The reason for the hashtags is so that you think resistance is futile. The reason that you can't walk down Oxford Street or Regent Street without passing beneath a whole bunch of flags is so that you believe that resistance is futile. Last week I went to France through Terminal 5, and to get into Terminal 5 I had to pass underneath a whole set of lights done out in the not the rainbow, the more sinister intersectional flag, because they want you to believe that resistance is futile. Well, what do we do in a situation like that? Okay, this is where I'm going to read from the Bible. Do you mind if I read from the Bible a second? Is that okay? You weren't expecting to find Lesbians and Gideon all in the same talk, were you? Well, you're going to get it. So, where are my glasses? That's where they normally are, on my head. Okie dokie. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give to the Midianites into their hands. Israel claimed glory for itself against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Now therefore proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart at once from Mount Gilead. And 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. But the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them. Then it will be that of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, the same shall go with you. And whoever I say to you, this one shall not go with you, the same shall not go with you. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, everyone who laps from the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink. And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people got down on their knees to drink water. Then the Lord said to Gideon, by the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and deliver you from the Midianites. I find a huge amount of comfort and instruction in that simple story. I love the Bible, but I'm very much Old Testament as opposed to New Testament. It may come as a surprise that I identify less with Martha and Mary, for instance, than I do with Jael, the wife of Haber. Because Jael, God bless her soul, is the kind of woman who, when her enemy is sleeping, drives a tent peg through their temple and does it in the name of God. And that is the kind of Christian I happen to be. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the book of Judges. I quite like that violent resistance that we find in there. So, what does this story of Gideon tell us? Well, first and foremost, it tells us that the vast number of people are actually afraid. And God says, that's fine. If you're afraid, just leave the battlefield. And what was it, 24,000 so disappeared off. Okay? That's absolutely fine. So when we find people who act in a fearful way in this gender-critical war, we've got to have compassion for them, because that is the norm. It's entirely normal and entirely rational and reasonable to be afraid when the police come knocking at your door. It's entirely reasonable and rational to be afraid when your HR manager says, unless you get in line, you're going to be fired, and we're going to give you a reference that says that you were fired for being a transphobic hater. It's entirely reasonable and rational to keep your head down. Okay? And that is what the vast majority of people will. About a year ago with Maya Forstatter, and it was a whole bunch of young people, maybe aged between 18 and 26, and they asked me, what do we do to get into this fight? And I said, you don't. That's my advice to you, is you don't. You're at the start of your lives, you're at the start of your careers. The best thing you can do is keep your head down, okay? Just don't make waves, because I don't want to be responsible for you having your life ruined because at this stage in your life and careers, you've cut across a HR department. It's not right and it's not fair. And I think Gideon, I think the book of Judges would agree with me. But what you can do if you are in that group of those who are afraid is this. You can read. You can come to groups like this outside of work time. You can be a quiet resistor. You can get a fake Twitter account and do your little bit there. I've got a whole bunch of women in Fair Cop, and very few of them are open about who they are. Because if they were open about who they are, they would lose their jobs. And that is entirely fine. You can be a quiet, silent resistor. What else you can do is this. You can learn to read critically. You can read a whole bunch of books. You can share your books at meal tables. You can talk to people that you kind of trust. Although you have to be careful, because if you think about the choreographer Rosie Kay, anybody know Rosie? Yeah. Fantastic choreographer. She did this superb thing called Five Soldiers, and she had her friends round, her dancers round, for a private Rosie Kay dinner party. And at about 1 or 2 in the morning, when the wine had been flowed, she said, I'm not entirely sure about this trans thing. And the following morning, she found out that her entire dance group had cancelled her. So you have to be careful. You have to be careful. So what I'm saying is it's entirely reasonable and understandable that you keep your head down. Well, then there's this second group, those that want to be in the fight. But then again, God says, let's just be a little bit careful here. Send them down to the water and let's see how they drink. And some got down and like a dog and drank from the water, and others knelt down and simply lapped the water into their mouths like that. And God said, it's the ones who knelt. And with this, they can be the soldiers. The ones that bent down and lapped like dogs, they've got to stand back. What's that all about? I was thinking about this. There are some people whose characters, where they are, even though they may want to join in the fight, there's something about them that's just not quite ready yet. There's something about them that's just not quite there. They haven't got the necessary intrinsic skills, the necessary intrinsic natural awareness that you need to be a soldier. Because if you lap in the water like a dog, then it may be that you're going to find yourselves with a hatchet in the back of your neck. Whereas if you're up and looking around like this, you can scan the area and you can see where the enemy was coming from. So what I'm saying is there is a natural type of fighter and a natural type who are not fighters. And you've got to work out which group you're in. Now, I think it's fairly clear that I'm in the group of fighters, because I get off, absolutely. I like nothing more than eating chief constables for breakfast. I absolutely love it, but I know that I am a very, very rare breed. We've got the 20-odd thousand, then we've got a whole bunch more, and then we've got this tiny group of 300. So what if you're of the group that you want to fight, but you don't, you made the mistake of bending down and lapping like a dog? Well, don't get discouraged. There's a place for you in this fight. The place for you in this fight is this. It's to make sure that the fighters have got the weaponry that they need. It's your job to make sure that the sword is in our hand. It's your job to make sure that you have given us, you've researched various bits and pieces and said, Harry, have you seen this? Harry, have you seen that? Harry, you need to take a look at this. Harry, make a challenge here. And that's what I rely on at Fair Cop. I have so many people send me things all the time saying, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. So if you're in that group, that's your job. That's what you need to do. And it's a wonderful job. It's an important job. Being the sword carrier, being the shield carrier, being the information giver, being in the intelligence corps, that is really super important. Because behind every frontline soldier, There's a whole bunch of people supporting the supply chain to that person. Okay? So you need to find where you are. Are you afraid? Well, you know what to do there. Do you want to be in the fight, but you just haven't got the character for it? Well, that's absolutely fine too. Do what you can do. But if you are a fighter, if you are called to fight, then what you have to do is give it your absolute all. And that was me. That was me. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Okay, the fiery furnace. The Lord will deliver me from this fiery furnace, but even if he doesn't, I'm going to remain absolutely faithful. And that was my attitude when it came to the High Court and the Court of Appeal. I absolutely believed that I would, because I believe that justice bends towards the truth. I absolutely believe that if God is for us, who can be against us? I absolutely believe in the story of Joshua, where God said to Joshua, every place that you place your foot, I will give to you. I believe that. I absolutely believed it. I also believed it from a rational point of view, in that when I considered the arguments, I didn't see how they could win. I just did not see how you could have a thing called a non-crime hate incident. I didn't see how it was possible. The police guidance said a non-crime hate incident must be recorded regardless of whether there is any evidence of hate. What? I'm sorry, that makes no sense at all. And I had an absolute faith that the judiciary, if I kept going, would eventually concede that I was right and the rest of them were wrong. But even if that was not the case, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I was going to do it. I was going to do it because it's in my nature. It's just fighting is in my nature. I cannot help but fight. If I see something that is wrong, I cannot help myself but get involved. It doesn't matter what the odds are, I cannot help it. It is inside me to rush into the battle and go, I might be the little guy and you might be the Goliath, I don't care. Wallop. And let's see what happens. That's just me, because I am part of that 300. How the heck did we get there? What's the next slide? I've no idea where we are now. I've got about 5 minutes. Okie dokie. Now, then, what I would encourage you to do is to type in "Rise of the British Gestapo" into YouTube, and you will see me being arrested last summer. I was arrested last summer when a former Royal Green Jacket veteran was arrested for, well, the police turned up at his house because he posted a picture of the pride flag that had been rearranged into a kind of looked like a swastika. And I knew that the police were coming because they'd been to him a couple of weeks beforehand and we had it all on film. And I said, you cannot arrest that man. All he's done, he's been satirical. He's retweeted what somebody else. He's not the originator of the post. You cannot arrest that man. And they said, well, we don't want to arrest him. We just want to question him. And I said, well, you can't question him either. He's not coming to the station. So when he doesn't come to the station, I'm going to arrest him. And I just said, well, to arrest him, you're going to have to arrest me. And I stood there, and they called the backup, and there were eventually 7 police officers. And I just stood there and said, you, Royal Green Jacket, you stand behind me. I'm going to stand here. And I said, if you want to arrest him, you've got to arrest me. And they did. They did. But they then arrested him. It was fantastic because we live streamed it to several million people, the arrest. We hit the press all over the world. We did interviews in America and in Australia. The Chief Constable lost a job. The Police and Crimes Commissioner came out and utterly condemned her own force. And eventually all charges were dropped against Darren Brady, the war veteran, and then it took a little bit longer with me, but eventually they dropped all charges against me. What I'm saying is, you've got to be, if you're a fighter, you've got to be brave. if you're a fighter, you've got to be prepared to spend a night in the cells. But if you're going to spend a night in the cells, you better know why you're there. You better understand what the law says, and you better make sure that you were on the right side of it. I knew that I was on the right side of the law, and I knew that they were operating unlawfully, and that's why I was more than happy to stand there and stand in the gap between the authority and the war veteran. And that's my job. I'll finish up in a moment now. That's my job. What I will ask you to do, as you are defending the family, as you are defending children, as you are going in and criticising PHSE, and as you are criticising all this, if the police come knocking, if the police advise to you that you are on the verge of committing a crime, or in fact have committed a crime, then what you need to do is get hold of me. And what I will do, I will put a massive target on my back and act as a decoy so that they come against me rather than against you. That's my job, that's my calling, and thank you for having me.